Chapter 6, Rising from the Storm, A Tale of Community and Resilience. Charla's heart raced at the sound of desperation in the villager's voice. She turned to her grandmother, concern etched on her face. "Granny, are you sure you're all right?" "Yes, my dear, I'm fine," her grandmother said, though there was a hint of weariness in her voice that worried Charla. "But we must help Mr. Thompson. Let's go." Charla nodded, determination fueling her spirit as she scrambled to her feet. Together, they moved towards where the cries for help were coming from. A group of villagers gathered around a frail figure sprawled on the ground. Mr. Thompson's gray hair was matted and damp, and his face was pale, a frightening contrast to the vivid colors of the world around them. "Step aside," Charla's grandmother instructed, pushing gently through the crowd. She knelt beside Mr. Thompson, placing her hand on his forehead. "He's cold and weak. We need to get him warmed up and fed." One of the villagers, a tall woman named Marla, stepped forward, her hands trembling. "We tried to get him to the shelter, but with the flood, he couldn't walk properly." "Gather anything warm," Granny instructed as she felt for a pulse. "And we need something nourishing, some broth, perhaps. His body needs support." Charla held her breath, anxiety creeping into her chest. She watched as villagers rushed to gather blankets and makeshifted cushions, while others headed toward the shelter they had created from scattered branches and tarps. The air was heavy with worry and the remnants of rain, but Charla refused to let fear take hold. "I'll find some food," she announced, sprinting back to where their temporary shelter lay. She rifled through their belongings, her heart racing as she scrambled to find the bread and dried fruits they had packed. As she dashed back to the group of villagers surrounding Mr. Thompson, she could feel the kindness swelling inside her, pushing aside her own worries. She reached out to hand the food to Granny. "Here. This will help." Her grandmother nodded and began to tear small pieces of bread, urging Mr. Thompson to take small bites. "Slowly now, just a little at a time." The villagers watched intently, their faces tight with concern. Charla could see the gravity of the situation rippling through the crowd. It was both terrifying and sobering. After a few tense moments, Mr. Thompson's eyelids fluttered. He slowly raised his eyelids, revealing bleary eyes that searched for familiar faces. Finally, his gaze settled on her grandmother, who smiled gently at him. "Welcome back, Mr. Thompson," she said softly, brushing the hair from his forehead. "You had us worried for a moment." What happened?" he stammered, his voice hoarse but steadying. "You fainted," Charla interjected, kneeling beside her grandmother. "We're here now. You just need to rest and eat." Mr. Thompson's lips twitched into a faint smile as he accepted the food, chewing carefully. "Thank you, dear," he said, his voice growing stronger. "I thought I would never make it, the flooding. It was all too much." "But you did," Charla exclaimed, feeling hope dance within her chest. "We're all together now, and we'll get through this storm, just like we've always done." As more villagers gathered and watched Mr. Thompson slowly revive, Charla's heart swelled with pride. The warmth of community surrounded them, wrapping itself around the fragile moments they were creating, forging bonds that grew stronger with every adversity. A quiet hush fell over the crowd as Mr. Thompson continued to eat while Granny brought him warm blankets. Charla looked around, finding the worried faces of her neighbors. Many had fallen ill after being drenched in the storm. They had suffered loss and fatigue alike. "Granny," she said, a thought sparking in her mind. "We must help everyone. We can make some broth together, something warm for those who are sick and cold." Her grandmother's eyes brightened with the suggestion. "That's a wonderful idea, Charla. Let's gather everyone's strength and resources. We'll create a soup that nourishes both body and spirit." The young girl jumped to her feet. "Everyone, we need your help," she called, her voice ringing with enthusiasm. "We're going to make a broth for everyone here. Let's find vegetables, herbs, anything we can use to create warmth. It will help those who are sick." A murmur of hope rippled through the villagers. Those who had just pulled back from despair started to move with purpose, motivated by the idea of coming together for the greater good. The atmosphere thickened with the aroma of gathering ingredients. Charla saw neighbors scouring through their belongings, pulling out potatoes, carrots, onions, and spices packed away in bags. Others began to ignite a fire near the shelter, an essential flicker of warmth settling against the night's cold presence. As they worked, Charla moved around, stirring the pot and assuring everyone involved that they would create something truly special. Laughter carried amidst the soft murmurs of fun stories, lifting spirits as ingredients combined and simmered. By the time the sun dipped fully below the horizon, a warm aroma filled the air, mingling with the gentle scent of earth after rain. The first bowl of steaming broth was served to Mr. Thompson, who took grateful slurps, his strength visibly returning. "Delicious," he exclaimed, laughter bubbling forth now. "Just what I needed, and what a wonderful community we have here." One by one, bowls were shared among the villagers, laughter breaking the remnants of despair enveloping their hearts. The warmth of the soup seeped into their very souls, a gentle reminder that together, they could triumph over any storm. As the villagers settled around the fire, their hearts lighter with every shared story, Charla felt her grandmother's hand squeeze her own. "You've done beautifully, my dear," her grandmother whispered, pride shining through her gentle eyes. "This will be a night to remember, one we'll share in our stories of resilience." In that moment, surrounded by warmth, laughter, and love, Charla knew they would rise from the ruins of sorrow. The storm was a mere passing in their tales, while the bonds of their hearts would forever be the anchor as they built a new future together, stronger than ever.